the professors asked all of us, what do you want to do when you become, when you grow up and finish university, and what do you want to do? And people were just answering typical answers like, okay, I want to have a family, I want to find the one, I want to have a good house, I want to be successful in my career. And when it was my turn, I said, I want to become a wise person with a big heart. And then everybody was looking at me like, where did she come from? So I felt different all my life, but I was very, very clear about I'm not going to give up on this.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who's out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode. Hey, welcome to The Exploding Human. My name is Bob Nickman. Today we travel to Spain to talk to Monica Esgueva. And we're going to be talking about her personal transformation with an aim to inspire people to reach the highest levels of human consciousness. But first, I'd like to invite you to visit my website, theexplodinghuman.com. Over there you can listen to episodes, read synopses, see photos of my guests. There's also a little bio on myself. You can also listen on YouTube. That is The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. As I said, my guest today is Monica Esgueva. She is in Spain, and since early childhood, she has been a seeker of higher levels of consciousness, and that's what we're going to talk about today, her new book, The 7 Levels of Wisdom, and how she always knew that this was something that she had to do in her life, and how she gave up a very comfortable material life to pursue all those things which would elevate consciousness and bring joy to herself and others. She's a fascinating person. I loved talking to her. So let's get into this thing. This is Monica Esgueva. Good morning, Monica. Wait a second. You're in Spain. What time is it? I forgot to ask you.
Well, it's 6 o'clock here, so it's not on the morning.
All right. So my morning is your evening. So how magical is the internet that you're going to be, going to bed in a few hours and I'm just getting started? How about that?
It's a magical connection, right?
It really is. And we're going to talk about something that has long been of interest to me, which is consciousness and transformation. I mean, that's really what the podcast is about anyway. Your story is something that I think people should hear. And so, most people aren't raised in families that talk about this stuff. I don't know if you were or not. I certainly was not. And it was a whole new thing to find out that there are people on the earth that don't do things the way most other people do. And curiosity sort of led me in a direction to do a lot of reading and finding out what else there was available in terms of really my perception about what life is and how I can make it better. How did you get started in this direction of this type of exploration? And I know some of the little details of your biography, but I like to hear it from you.
Sure. I was born spiritual, so I had a sense of closeness with divinity since I was very young. And I asked around, like, what are we doing here? Why are we here? What do we come from? What is the meaning of life? And adults around me could not answer those questions. So it was kind of difficult. And one day, I remember I asked my father, where do I come from? And he said, well, we picked you up from under a bridge. You were living with some gypsies and we brought you home. And I bursted out crying. Because it's like, okay, they don't understand me. They don't really know what is going on here.
Was he joking? He was joking, right?
Joking, of course.
Yeah. Okay.
I felt misunderstood. So I realized that I had to keep quiet because they would not be able to understand me. So I had to find my own ways, as you were saying, in your life. I initiated a spiritual quest very early. And in the beginning, I got close to the Catholic Church because that was available around me. But at some point, I realized that they were not coherent with Jesus' message. And I continued just looking for answers. So I looked for books and I educated myself on spirituality, on the nature of the mind, on transcendence, since I was probably 14 or 15, very early. Instead of wanting to go out and go getting drunk and try drugs and go to the bars, I really wanted to become wiser. And there was this anecdote at some point. I think I was 20 or something like that. We were in a class, and the professors asked all of us, "What do you want to do when you grow up and finish university? And what do you want to do?" And people were just answering typical answers like, "Okay, I want to have a family. I want to find the one. I want to have a good house. I want to be successful in my career." And when it was my turn, I said, "I want to become a wise person with a big heart." And then everybody was looking at me like, where did she come from? So I felt different all my life, but I was very, very clear about I'm not going to give up on this. I need to find answers. I will live my life the way I want to, and I'm not going to give up and try to be like everybody else because that will go against my own intuition, heart, wish, bliss, passion, you name it. So that was my beginning.
I had an experience when I was a kid. You just reminded me of this with what you were talking about. I was laying down in the grass in the back of my parents' house. I must have been about, I don't know, somewhere between 6 and 9, maybe. And I was looking up at the clouds, and all of a sudden I went up into the clouds. I could feel myself as part of the clouds and this vastness to the universe, and that there was something else. There was something mysterious going on that nobody was talking about. And I thought I was the first person to ever figure it out, and I went, oh, not figure, to realize it. And I went, oh gosh, I better keep this a secret. No one's going to get this. I have no words for it, but it was an experience. I probably pushed it down or just put it to the side. I was a kid, and then I just, it's sort of like you kind of shake your head and you get back to, and I use the term loosely, reality, and then and then you just kind of go about your business. But I have never forgotten that moment. It was very powerful, and I thought, wow,
Those are big experiences, right, Bob?
so
Those are
amazing.
big that you never forget.
Yeah. So, but I didn't feel comfortable bringing it up. Now later on, when we'll talk about you, but let's talk about me for 2 seconds. Later on, when I was a teenager, I was, there was a lot of experimentation going on with psychedelic drugs, so that topic came up a lot. I'm not sure that drugs are really the right way to get there, but they certainly offered a certain experience, but it also offered the experience of being able to talk about consciousness and the big questions. It made it okay. So I'll give that to the hippie movement. I think that was a wonderful part of it. Right. Misguided as the drugs were, they certainly did open a door to at least the idea of these things.
The topic, the conversation, right?
Yeah. So what happened then? You couldn't find really, people to talk to this about too much, and you were seeking in books, and I'm sure that was comforting to a certain amount. But then there's always a restlessness. How do I get this experience for myself?
I tried to fit in for a while, and I got married early. I studied economics and I got a master's degree. And I went to work in London for Prada and then to an international school in Paris. And we had a very good material life, good social life, good holidays, a good house in one of the best neighborhoods in Paris. And yet I felt so unfulfilled. So at some point I decided to go to North India, where most of the Tibetans are there living in exile. And I wanted to understand the predicament better. And I wanted to do some research for a possible book. And my plan was to go there for 3 weeks. But then I missed my flight home. I ended up staying for 3 months. And I started studying with Tibetan lamas, receiving teachings from the Dalai Lama. And I realized what those people were teaching were very much aligned with what I felt inside. And it's like, okay, these people are in the same wavelength. And they understand me, I understand them. And I felt a real resonance with their words, with their way of living, and with their aims in life. So I thought I'm gonna keep studying with them because they have a very good map to understand human nature, to understand the mind, the heart, and they have a good map to reach to enlightenment. And then that's really what my objective was, but I didn't have that precise word at the time. So I went back to Paris after the 3 months abroad, and I realized I couldn't go on with my former life. So within 6 months, I divorced. I left my job. I left my house. I left all my plans. I took my car and went back to my parents' house with whatever fitted in my car. And I realized I did not want to waste my life, even if I didn't know how to earn a living. But I knew I wanted to contribute to a better world. And that was just my direction. This is what I want to do. I don't know how, but I know this is what I want. So I started getting training, mostly in the US, and going back to Nepal and India to keep studying with Tibetan lamas for 10 years. I was going back and spent 2-3 months every time I went there, every year. And that's how I changed my life.
I love it. What was the training that you did in the US? Is there anything specific?
I studied mindfulness in UCLA, and I studied coaching with and neuro-linguistic programming with John Grinder, one of the initiators of the movement, and I studied hypnosis in New York. Well, a number of things. Yeah.
Those are all interesting things. I've certainly not unfamiliar with them, and I think it's interesting how some of these, if you want to call them disciplines, dovetail with each other and help you understand. One helps you understand the other one. They're not all that different. It's just sort of the way in is a little bit different. I was just I just stopped myself from saying what I was going to say, and I'm going to say it. The mind is very tricky. The mind is very, very tricky. And I always
say it.
Right. And sometimes it's like, sometimes I go, oh, this is going well, but is it? Maybe I'm tricking myself. Sometimes my mind is so tricky, it tells me I'm tricking myself, or to question whether I'm tricking myself. So there's all these different layers of ways of doing things. So, I don't think what we're talking about can be achieved only through the mind. I don't think I think that's a really powerful tool, but I think there's the different parts of the mind and that are not reliable.
The mind is complex, and according to Vedanta, there are 4 ways or 4 yogas to reach to unity and universal consciousness. One of them is the intellectual path, or they call it jnana yoga, which is, okay, you use your mind, your analysis and your way of understanding reality as a path to see that we have a lot of defenses, to understand that the mind constructs a matrix that you have to go through and leave behind, and you do it through the mind. But it's only one path, and you cannot forget the other paths. If your nature is more intellectual, this is a very good path, but it cannot be the only one. And the other paths are the path of love and devotion. This is mostly for people that are more emotional, and it's seeing the unity that we all are, the oneness, the divinity, see it through people. You see it in people, through people, and you see that you work with relationships. And instead of becoming something that is tedious or uncomfortable or even problematic, you see people give you the opportunity to work on yourself through love, through unconditional love. There's the third path is the path of service to others. So this is for people that are more extroverted, that they like being in a community. And what you do is, okay, you work on your altruism and you want to serve others, but you don't do it out of sacrifice, because then you harbor resentment. You do it because you understand that other people are just part of you as well. And you do it without expecting anything in return, just because you want to do it. It's your heart is open and that pours love. And the fourth path is the path of meditation. And this is people that are more of an introvert nature or more contemplative. And that's another very powerful path to be able to quieten your mind and go through the mind to the other side, because the mind will take you to the shore of the river, but it will not help you cross the river to the other side.
Oh, I like that. That sounds great. You know, I love when that point in a meditation where the mind actually is able to stop. If it lasts a second, that's a really long time. But it's just an amazing feeling to not have the mind kind of playing with you in some way. It's kind of amusing and troubling at the same time, when the thoughts are going, just sort of monkey mind chatter that goes on in there. I'm always surprised by I'm surprised by what I think a lot of the time. Like, why am I thinking about that? I haven't thought about that in 25 years. Or what does that have to do with anything? And it's coming in there, and I like the sort of the practice of looking at what the mind is doing while it's doing it and going, oh, that's interesting that I just thought that, and not, I guess you would call it, not attaching to the thought.
When you don't engage with your own thoughts, it's the only way
Mm-hmm.
you are able to quieten the mind, because otherwise that radio, I call it the radio. The radio is always on. So at least be able to lower the tones, so you don't hear that all the time, because otherwise it's tiring, it's really tiring.
It is, and there's a constant feeling of that I need to do something. Something needs to be done or get done in order for me to get to some point down the road where I can be more content in some way.
Right. That's what we have been sold, and we bought into it. Society is a factory of hedonistic pleasure, and society has convinced us that it's only by doing more that you're going to reach a state of contentment and inner peace. And it's like, by having more followers, more money, a better job, more relationships, more pleasures. And how on earth a frantic race is going to bring you peace? It's like, if you really analyze it, it's just not credible. Why we buy into it?
It's an interesting thing to figure out that really doesn't work for most people. Well, it doesn't work for anybody, I don't think. But then there's on the other side of it, there's also this sort of feeling, if you're not doing that, you're being lazy in some way. You're being unproductive, equals lazy, equals, slovenly, and not responsible. I mean, there's that whole sort of
Right.
shaming piece to it that,
Yes.
I mean, and those are real things in some cases, but one doesn't necessarily mean the other. I think what you're talking about is simplifying.
Well, yeah, and it's also about the right action. It doesn't mean that you have to be lazy or not doing anything. It means that you do things when things need to be done, but you don't get obsessed with doing things because you think that is going to take you somewhere where you finally will be at peace, you will be protected, you can relax, and that is a place, a summit to reach, because it doesn't work that way. But then we managed to convince ourselves, okay, well, maybe if I have more money, maybe have a bigger house, maybe if I have the recognition, then I can relax, and then everything will be all right, and I will have the protection and this safe net where I don't need to go so fast. In the last 15 years, I have been working with a lot of people in helping them with transform. I have also worked with millionaires. I have worked with celebrities. I have worked with business leaders, and they have exactly the same problem. They are in the same predicament because there is a deep-seated feeling of dissatisfaction and anxiety because there's always something else to have. And then it's also the fear of not losing what you already have. So it's like there's a dead end over there. And I remember like a couple of days ago, I had this client. I have been working with him for a while. I know him very well. And his father used to have to be, I don't know, the president of a bank. His mother is a millionaire right now. So she told me this story, and they have a house in Switzerland. And she's obsessed that she wants to go to Gastad, which is like a billionaire resort in Switzerland. She wants to buy a house there so she can hang out with people that are, instead of millionaires, are billionaires. It's like, so there's no end to it. This is the kind of person that takes private jets to travel, but she's not satisfied at all. Now she wants to be with billionaires. So this is just an example, a real life example of how bad this is. We are not focusing on where we have to focus, which is how do I get to that place that is not outside, is inside of me. And as you said, the mind is very complex, and we need to get layers out, layer after layer, and then you go deeper and deeper, and then you get closer and closer. But it's within, it's not outside.
Yeah, and people say that all the time, but it's when putting it into practice is a little bit different than kind of even talking about it or knowing it. It's because there is so much pressure to be the other way.
Practice.
It's a lot of practice. It really is. And sometimes I'm more successful at it than others.
And I think it's also the motivation needs to be there, because if your motivation is to be materially successful, then you don't have the motivation to work inside. You have the motivation to work outside. What is your priority? So it's a question of motivation and priorities as well. It doesn't mean that we still have to do some work because we are in this world, we have to pay our bills, that's for sure. But it shouldn't take all our focus, all our time, all our effort, because otherwise we are not going to have the time to do the real work, which is inside.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for not working so hard or so long and to the point where you're actually making yourself sick and stressed. And sometimes I've had these jobs, careers where I've had to put in a lot of hours, like 14-hour days, 12 to 14-hour days for many months on end, many, many months. I enjoyed the work, but I didn't enjoy it 14 hours a day.
Right.
That's just what I had. That was just because of what I was doing. That's the way people did it, and I had to do it. And sometimes I would come home and I'm like, well, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I mean, but I look at my kids and my wife and I'm like, well, I guess I like the work. This is where it landed me now. I'm having success at it and I've got people to support. So, but there were a lot of times where I was just, I don't like this because it's taking too much time. And what do I have? I'm born with a body. So, and hopefully it's in good shape. And the second thing I'm born with is an unknown amount of time. And the third thing is some kind of a spirit. So the three things that I always say to myself, well, how am I taking care of my body? How am I nurturing my spirit? And how am I spending my time? Which includes who I'm spending with, of
Mm.
course, too. And those are kind of the three questions I think for me have been the most important. Like you say, what is this? Why am I here? And how do I want to spend my days? How do I want to do that?
I remember the question that when I was with the first time, and I heard that, I listened to their teachings about death many times because Tibetans talk about it very freely and very regularly. But I remember like thinking about my own death, and it's like it can happen anytime. What if I don't have the time to really dedicate my life to what I really want, to what is meaningful for me? And I may as well die tomorrow or next week. And I didn't even have the courage and the time to try. So that was a big trigger for me when I decided to change my life completely. It's like, okay, I don't know how long I have here, but whatever I have on this earth, I came to do something and I'm going to do it. And that's it.
Well, let's talk about this because I was reading in your bio that you work in hospice.
I volunteered for 10 years with children with cancer in a hospital. I was accompanying them and their families. And I worked for a year in a hospice. So those were two of the ways I've worked as a volunteer. Significant experiences for me. Working for a year in a hospice, I thought it was going to be different. I thought I was going to be able to share with them that the transition we call death was not a big deal, that it was not something to fear because of my own experiences with the children and my own experiences with deceased, let's call it that way, deceased people, and my experiences learning how to help people that have left their bodies with the Tibetans. I learned that with them. So I wanted to be of use with those people that were so close to dying. And I found out that people at that point, when you're at that stage of your life or close to death, people don't want to talk about their own death. So I could not talk to anyone for a year. And I said, well, I don't think I can help them. So I just quit. And a few years later, a friend of mine had a holistic healing center. And she proposed, why don't you try to have a workshop and teach a workshop on how to prepare spiritually for dying? I think it would be very useful. So I did that. And to my surprise, the people that will come were people that felt that their death was really far away. But at least I was able to do it. And then I ran into many of those people afterwards, let's say a few years later. And so many people told me, okay, this was so useful to me because I was able to accompany my mother. I was able to be with my father. I was able to be with my friend. And I was calm. And I was able to calm everybody around me. And I was able to hold the hand of this dear person without fearing it and without being so involved in a well of sorrow. So it was heartwarming for me because, okay, it made sense. I was able to help some people, even if it was not the people that I thought I was going to help.
That's really interesting that people wouldn't want to talk about it. I don't know if that's 100% of people that are dying that don't want to talk about it, but I can understand that.
I even have friends that were spiritual, and they were close to dying. They never wanted to talk about their own death with me or anyone else for that matter. So I'm not sure, this is only my experience, but in my experience, there was a high percentage of people that didn't want to talk about that. Even my own father, I mean, he left his body only 3 months ago. And I told him once, it's like, okay, I do this, Dad. Um, I know you don't want to talk about it. He didn't want to. I hinted at that once when he was going to go through surgery for skin cancer. And I said to him, look at that. If you die, it's okay. It's not a big deal. You have to be prepared for that. And I think he was one of the rare occasions he got mad at me because he didn't want to talk about considering it or anything like that. So, but I did tell him, if when the moment comes, if I am not around, I will accompany you. I know how to do it. I will accompany you from wherever I am. But just remember, don't be afraid. I will be with you. And he said, okay, he will take me seriously. Since I was a child, he never made fun of me or anything. He said, okay. He didn't understand it, but he said, okay. And 3 months ago, I didn't know it was the last moment of his life, but I was there. I was very fortunate to be there. I was holding his hand, and I was able to do a practice called POWA that Tibetans do to be able to facilitate the exit of consciousness from the body, either your body or someone else's body. So I did that with him, and 20 minutes later, he left his body. So it was a very, very, very beautiful experience.
Wow, what a gift for both of you.
It was.
That's incredible. I remember talking to my dad before he died, and he said, I'm not really afraid to die. He goes, what I'm afraid of is that it's going to hurt. And he wasn't in pain. He just was, the life force was dwindling for a variety of reasons. And I said, well, are you in pain now? And he goes, no. I said, well, why would that change? I don't think that's probably what's going to happen. You don't have anything that is a painful thing. You're just, in your 90s and things are not working like they used to. He goes, he didn't, it was an interesting thing that he wanted to hold on because he was afraid that he was going to be in pain. Now that's not what he was, not in pain when he died, but he also had I could feel, and my sister had the same experience, that he just was not able to. It took him a while to cross over to wherever we go, or whatever happens. He didn't. He was fighting it. You could feel it for.
Exactly. That's what I wanted to with my father. It's like that's what I told him in advance when his mind was still clear, because then he got Alzheimer's disease, so his mind was not clear anymore. But at that time, I was able to talk to his spirit, and I knew he could listen. And the funny thing is, probably 2 or 3 weeks after he passed away, I was meditating, and then suddenly I fell asleep, which is very unusual when I meditate. And my body was asleep, but I was alert because I was meditating. It was a funny kind of state of consciousness. And there he came. He came to visit me, and it was only maximum 3 weeks afterwards. And he was shining. He was beaming. He was looking so young and so well and so happy. And I ran towards him, crying out of joy. And I said to him, Dad, you came back from the dead. It's normal for me, but people are going to be very surprised. And then I said to him, well, you will have to tell me, because I'm sure you're coming for a reason. So you will have to tell me the reason. And he only told me something. He was just beaming and shining and gleaming, you know. And he told me just one thing. He said, and you will have to tell me what you know. Because I think he was referring that before, during his life, he didn't want to talk about spirituality and death. And now that he doesn't have his body, he knew about this and he was willing. So it was such a beautiful experience. And this is one of those experiences that you will never ever forget. So vivid.
Well, I had a very similar thing. Interest, and I was it was in a dream, but you know how some dreams are more dreamy and some are experiences. It's sort of in between dream and waking state. And I was in this room. I'll tell you the dream. It was I called my sister the next day to tell her all about it, and so I'm in a room. It's like a study, like a den of you know in a home, beautiful wood paneling and this staircase coming down, and I'm sitting in a chair, a comfortable chair, and there's a curtain over the staircase, and the curtain parts goes up, and my grandfather, who died when I was 16, okay, he comes down the stairs, and he's very matter of fact. Which was not really his personality, but he was very matter of fact. And he looked up the stairs, and my dad came down the stairs. This is about 3 weeks after he died, maybe. He came down the stairs, and like your experience, he was vibrant. He was smiling. He was younger. He was like in his 30s, thick black hair, and he gave me the biggest smile on his face. Gave me this big hug. He was fine. It was like that's what it was, and my grandfather had helped him. That's the feeling I got. And comedically, my grandfather was a little annoyed that he had to do it. I could tell. He's like, "Oh, okay. Like I've known this for a long time, you know, and now I had to teach you, and I want to get back up there." You know, that's the feeling. And they went back up, and I woke up, and I was like, "Whoa!" And I called my sister and just told her what happened, because we had been talking about his difficulty in accepting that he had died.
Right. Well, I think when you have those experiences, and as you said, it's not a mere dream. Jung used to call them big dreams. Those are dreams that are experiences that will just leave a trace in you, and it's so different from your mundane daily life that opens a door towards something bigger, and usually it's the other side, or maybe sometimes it's higher beings of light giving you messages and things like that. And I think we are in such a superficial and materialistic society that has forgotten about this ability that humans have to connect with the other side. And we do have that. And it's very heartwarming, because it's like, okay, now I know for sure. I didn't have any doubts, but that kind of encounter is so warm. And it really, you know that he's doing well, you know he's happy, you know he's really, his life goes on, his projects go on, and then you will be able to meet with him any other time. And I have other times I have met him again, and it's so beautiful.
Yeah, and it's and you could make an argument that that's just your mind trying to deal with grief in this way, that because you're sad. But I don't buy that, because I wasn't really that sad.
Exactly, I wasn't sad at all.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't sad. The time had come, and the body had given out, and my dad didn't even want to be alive anymore, because he told me that. He said, "I'm done," and so I wasn't really sad. I was, you can miss somebody but not be sad. Not that
Exactly.
so there were many moments that I've missed him, wish I could talk to him and all those kinds of things, but I certainly I felt actually, and I think he did too, a certain amount of relief to not have to deal with a body that was failing him, So I think though, and a lot of times I don't know what it is, the arrogance of modern culture, they see that as something that primitive cultures do because they're ignorant and superstitious.
Mm.
Well,
Well, our modern society is ignorant of so many things that are anything that is not conventional, they are very ignorant of. And they don't admit their ignorance, which is one of the worst lacks that people have in the conventional societies. Like they think that the only paradigm that exists is the scientific paradigm or
yeah.
the rational mind, or that we are our ego. And it's like, okay, you want to believe that, go ahead, but be my guest, but you're not going to be a happy person ever. So you choose wisely, or you just have to deal with the consequences.
Yeah, I love science and facts and research and all that stuff. I think it's fantastic. But where does that come from? There's some sort of an energy, a force underneath that. So, you got to wonder, ladies and gentlemen.
And the perfection of nature, everything works in such a wonderful flow, and it's just amazing how they can still say, well, this is all accidental. Sure. Whatever.
Well, let's talk about your book a little bit because there's the number 7 is in the title. I'm curious about numbers sometimes and can you say the name of the book, and then let's talk about what those 7 transformational things are and how did you arrive at 7? It's a lucky 7, as they say in the gambling world.
It's a magical number, or mastery number. We have 7 chakras in our bodies, and it's a sacred number. But I just came with it because what I understood, the name of the book is The 7 Levels of Wisdom. And I understood that we go through different stages in our lives, different stages of development. And it doesn't mean that everybody's going to go through the 7 stages in one lifetime. I think we usually do in several or a lot of lifetimes, because the last one is the one of unity. And we only reach there after, as the Dalai Lama says, eons of time. So it takes a while to go through all the 7 stages. But as we increase our awareness and our understanding, our compassion, we change the way we look at the world. We change the choices we make. We change the moral reasoning, how we look at ourselves as well, and how our relationships are impacted by all that. So I understood that we don't stay the same. We can progress. We can make progress through these different stages. And it's not like when you progress from one to another, it's like a Russian doll. You integrate the previous one and you become more expansive. So it's not like you can look down on other people and say, okay, they're inferior. No, because you have been there, and part of you is also that, but you have been able to outgrow that kind of thing. So as we increase our wisdom, as we increase the level of consciousness, we are able to go from one stage to another. And we go from the lowest one, which is being a conformist. And this is when we want to be like everybody else in our community, in our country, in our family, in our religious group, wherever. We follow the rules, and we don't dare to be different. And that's at the very lowest level, to the latest level, which is the unity level. And this is when you become very much united to consciousness in general. You don't judge people, you don't criticize people, you accept everyone as they are. you are in the present, you you understand that you are not your ego, but you are able to integrate not only intellectually that you are not your ego, you act from a different place. And you start living in a state of flow where you can see the perfection of the plan, even at very difficult situations, whether it's this in your life or on a global scale. So we have to go through all those stages because we graduate only at the very end. We graduate when we get enlightened. We graduate when we we self-transcend. And that should be our most important goal for everyone on this planet. I hope that one day we'll arrive to that sort of general objective, because the world will be very different.
Well, that's always the big hope. You know, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I know very little, so
We all know little. Until we get enlightened, we know little.
I'm always shocked at the older I get how little I know. It's like I know more facts and certain things, and I know very little about the things I thought I knew about. So, and boy, the idea of like not judging other people and having those kinds of very strong opinions about how to live and how other people should live and all that is a really I don't know if well, I don't, certainly in this lifetime, that's not going to happen. I can tell. I enjoy it. I actually get some enjoyment out of being judgmental sometimes, you know, not always, but sometimes I really enjoy being, you know, somebody who observes flaws in a way that maybe other people don't, or but it creates a lot of problems in the world, that's for sure.
Well, the thing is, this is the work we came to do. You know, it's like we have to transform our minds from being judgmental and critical and judging towards benevolence and loving kindness. And this is not an easy thing because the ego loves judging, you know, whether it is self-judging or judging others, or both generally. So it takes a lot of inner work to transform that, to transmute all negativity that we harbor, we dwell on, towards something that is positive and helpful and beneficial. Because at the end of the day, being dwelling on negativity is not beneficial for anyone. And, no. and we just do it out of lack of practice. We do it out of reactivity, lack of attention as well. And we have to be very mindful every single minute of our life. And that takes a lot of effort. So sometimes it's like, okay, I will just forget about all those things and be myself and say whatever I want and do whatever I want. And then we regret it because we may do it at the heat of the moment, but then when time goes by, you look backwards and it's like, okay, in hindsight, I regret what I said. I should not have said that.
Yeah.
And then you cannot change it.
You know, so you ever have this where you say something, and as it's coming out of your mouth, you want to reach out and grab it and put it back in, but it's too late. Like your awareness that you're not doing the right thing comes much quicker sometimes when you get a little bit more aware, but it's not quite quick enough. You go, oh, I got to stuff that back in. Oh no, it's out. And then here's another thing that I've experienced is wanting to say something because it's, you know, it's biting, it's cutting, and maybe it's a little funny, but I don't because I know it might be hurtful. Mm. And instead of feeling good about it, I feel frustrated, like, oh, I really wanted to do that, and I had to swallow those words, and I didn't want to do that. But I know it was the right thing, but boy, that would have felt great. But would it have? I don't know. But it's an interesting thing to be able to, you know, be mindful enough not to do something, but then actually have a little bit of pain about it.
That's the thing. The ego always feels entitled. So it's like one of the things that the ego doesn't want to do is question itself, because it's like, oh no, I know better. So it's like every time you question yourself, you question your own ego, you question your mind, it feels uncomfortable. It's like, oh no, I know better. I know it all. And it's like, you don't. So shut up. And even if it feels good at the moment, it's not going to feel good afterwards. So please keep it inside. And sometimes I'm not favorable to repressing things, but it's best at the very, very, the limit is best not to say it, even if it feels like repression, than saying it or doing it.
Right. Well, when in doubt, don't say it. You can always say it later if it's that important.
Like, question is it true? Are you absolutely sure it's true? Is it helpful?
Yeah.
And is it adequate to say it? And then when you question, you ask yourself those three questions, most of the time it's like, none of those, none of the above, so please don't say it.
It would be a much more peaceful world if people kept their mouths shut more.
Right. Well, it always starts with the word, right? And then the actions follow the words that we think, the words we say. So we have to be very careful and very cautious and align our thoughts, our words, and our actions with our higher self, our soul, our best intention towards ourselves and everybody else. And it takes a lot of attention.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of people want to transform themselves, and they don't know where to even start. They just don't know. I mean, you had the intuition and the wherewithal to make a huge change, and a lot of people can't muster that kind of commitment, certainly to that level, and certainly right away. What do you suggest to people that are feeling, uncomfortable with the way things are? How would you tell somebody, here's a great way to begin that's very doable?
Well, I think one of the things we already said, we mentioned it before, which is think about how long you may have fear. You don't know. So that immediately puts you on the right track, because it's like, okay, do I want to spend the rest of my life like this? Or what if I'm not here in a month?
Yeah.
All these things that I think that are so important are not important anymore from when you see it from that, in that light, through that lens. It's like, okay, does it make sense what I'm doing? Does it really have some, or everything I'm doing is purposefully? Does it have a meaning? Does my life have a meaning? Do I enjoy what I do? And maybe not everybody has to make such a huge change as I did, but you can start with small steps. If you don't make a change, life is going to make it for you. It's most of the people that come to me, it's people that are going through a crisis. So they didn't want to make the changes willingly. So now they need to make them unwillingly. But it's like, I'm feeling so bad. I have so much sadness, or I have so much frustration or rage or whatever it is, that I need to do something about it. But it's only when you touch rock bottom that you say, okay, I'm willing now. Okay, what does it take for me to do it? I will do it.
The other thing that you were talking about, thinking about your own death and the limited amount of time unknown amount of time that we have. Also, when dealing with other people, to think about to ask this question, and I'm not the first person to ever come up with this, and because I didn't come up with it, I heard it. Treat other people as if it's their last day on earth. How different will it be if you're keeping that in mind?
And one thing I used to do a lot, I'm traveling less now, but I used to travel a lot and long hauls and everything. What I used to do is every time I will take a long haul plane, I will think about it and say, what if this is my last flight? Am I ready for this? Is my life in order? Have I forgiven everyone? have I done what I wanted to do in this life? Can I go peacefully if it is my last flight? And that brought me so much peace, because I felt, okay, everything is in order. I can go anytime now. And that's the thing. I think it's a helpful way to look at your life,
Yeah.
And if there are things that are not in order, then I will say, take care of them as soon as possible, just in case.
Well, I want to thank you for being on the show and talking to me. I really kind of melted into a meditative state while I was talking to you. I got very relaxed. Even though I'm present, I felt very relaxed, which is coming right across the internet through the computer. So that's a tribute to you, I suppose, and to us and our communication. So thank you so much.
It's the energy. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be talking to you today.
Now, is there a website too that people can contact you if they want to? I'm sure you work with people remotely. Everyone does that these days.
I do all my sessions online, actually.
Yeah,
because people are everywhere. I work with people in New Zealand,
Okay, so how does somebody get a hold of you?
Well, my website is Monica Esgueva. That's MonicaEsgueva.com. And then they will find everything there. I have a YouTube channel where I put some content for free every week. And then I have, my forthcoming book, The 7 Levels of Wisdom. And I think that can be a helpful tool for many people. Hopefully.
Okay. And is your YouTube channel also your name?
Yes. I have one in Spanish. So you don't find it right away, put English, and then you find the one in English.
All right. And I'm going to say your name and spell it again so the people will know where to go. Monica Esgueva. MonicaEsgueva.
Thank you, Bob.
Yes. Thank you. You have a beautiful evening. That's what you're going to have. You're going to have a beautiful evening, and I'm going to have a beautiful day.
Thank you, Bob.
Much appreciation for you folks listening to The Exploding Human. The website is theexplodinghuman.com. The YouTube channel is The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. Once again, big thanks to Monica Esgueva. Please check her out at monicaesgueva.com. Have a fantastic day. Thank you.